Welcome. This is Leading with Spirit, the show that gives you an in-depth look at topics like what it takes to navigate your spiritual journey, how to heal yourself and grow your spiritual gifts, and balanced practices to expand your business and your spiritual leadership. I'm your host, Spirit Bird, shamanic teacher, healer, and author, here to guide you on your journey to becoming your most potent spiritual leader. Do you want to blow up the system already? Or maybe you've been the system people want to blow up. Maybe you've been the representation of the system of the man and people keep coming after you. Perhaps it seems like no matter what you do, you always seem to get it wrong, or at least get caught in every little mistake that you make that other people don't seem to get caught in. You seem to get caught in those mistakes or get blamed. It might sometimes feel like people are just pointing out your flaws. And you'd probably prefer to walk your own path and do your own thing. Thank you very much. Hello, Lone Wolf. Hello, South. Your biggest gift, creating new pathways. Your biggest wound, destruction. Welcome back to Leading with Spirit. This month, I've been taking you for a walk around the wheel of four directions and exploring how knowing where you are on the wheel will help you tackle problems in your life and in your business. 2 weeks ago, we talked about the North. Last week, we talked about the East. This week, we'll be talking about the South. I'll be sharing the gifts of the South and the wounds you need to know so that you can end the stuck pattern of the wound living through you and through your business and enter into the gift of that direction, the gift of that part of the wheel. This is how we grow ourselves sustainably, and this is also how we grow powerful and sustainable businesses. On this episode today, I'll be sharing with you how to spot the wound of the South, what you need to do to heal it, and how it's going to show you how to take your business and yourself to show you the difference between repeating a cycle or going to the next level of creating new paths. Today, we'll be talking about rules, failure, vulnerability, and love. If I feel I'm going to get punished by rule makers, then I'm going to reject the rules so they don't reject me. This is a core pattern of the South. Core pattern, especially in the wound. You can probably already see, even just with that statement, where it can move from the wound to the gift, right? If we reject the rules so they don't reject us, this could be destruction from the wounded side, where we just want to destroy the rule makers. But on the flip side, if we want to reject the rules and create something new, this is the gift side. But as far as the wound in business and in life, this path can look like, what happens a lot in this path is we have no fear. So we move so fast that we end up making destructive decisions. Or you're going so fast and you just sort of leap without any support or clarity, which is also known as sabotage. Sometimes in this wound, it can feel like no matter what you do, something is after you, either in life or in business. And again, this can also look like in all of the ways. This can look like literally somebody is chasing you in your life. It can look like there's a group of people that are after you because you're succeeding or because you're the black sheep. And it can also look like the belief that you have negative spirits after you or after other people in your life. It can also look like no matter what happens, you'll F it up somehow. So why bother trying? You could also blow things up subconsciously. So you get to be the one doing it and nobody else gets to do it to you, right? This can look like self-deprecation. This can look like self-diminishment. because we feel like we have power. If we do it to ourselves, then we don't have to experience the pain of when somebody else does it to us. On the flip side, we might be pretty good at also diminishing others so that they're the ones that are down and we are the ones that are up. This is the core trait here. What happens is you basically keep fighting the system, fighting your family, fighting yourself. Your thinking is based on duality, right versus wrong. Again, our thinking in the North is based on knowing. Our thinking in the East is based on non-dual. Our thinking in the South is based on duality. And again, we all need to have experience of these and be able to access this in ourselves to be balanced. And with each of these, there's a gift and a wound. So the duality comes with this belief of right versus wrong, winner or loser. That's why it feels like a battle. And what comes along with this is a belief that it's what you're here to do, to fight the system, to fight the bad guys, to fight the evil spirits, to fight the narcissists. And while you have the skills to do it, the real change happens when you realize that the easiest way to end the fight is to stop playing that game altogether. Just because you can handle it, just because you're a good fighter, doesn't mean that you should or that you have to. You're allowed to choose ease, inclusiveness, and love. You get a seat at the table too. You get to be here and join us. Sometimes we can talk ourselves out of something that we do want and convince ourselves we're in agreement with something that we don't want. Like maybe you are in the space of struggle and fighting. And what we can do here in that wound of the South is tell ourselves that we were built to do this, that this is what we signed up for, that we're here, our journey is supposed to be hard, right? And that's not actually true. This is a story we're telling ourselves because we're afraid to experience anything else, right? Or we're afraid that if we exit that cycle, we might fail. That if we choose something else and it doesn't happen, that we will be the failure again. So we actually decide to not choose anything else except for the fight, which makes it hard to progress in life, to grow personally and spiritually, and to grow our businesses too. It's a lot of energy that we spend on the fight. And we think, again, that this is just in the cards that we're dealt. So we either try to hide the flaws and get caught in the web of lies, or we end up being in inauthenticity, or we end up fighting everyone. Another way this can look is you might embrace the fight, right? And then pretend that, or embrace the side of you that doesn't have any fear and doesn't care who gets hurt in the process. These all, of course, are the wounded side of the South. The way it can show up in business is constantly having to replace employees. Like no one has what it takes to stick around. Different than the North where they let you down, right? This is like they don't have what it takes. They don't have the gusto you have. They don't have the lack of fear, or they're too emotional. It can look in business, it can look like building movements against something. And again, getting caught in that fight where you don't go anywhere because your whole business is based on fighting it, not actually changing it. And so again, the wound in the South has us focused more on how something is wrong instead of what we can do that would be right instead. And here's the thing. So the South, you're risk adverse. This is a really cool quality to have. So in business, that's an advantage if you're using it in the right way. The downside is your fear of failure might actually be more powerful than than not being afraid to take risks. Being seen in failure feels like being wounded. And so you have to make sure that you're never wounded to make sure you're never vulnerable. In this way, it is being vulnerable that feels most unsafe, but it's also your greatest medicine. And let's be clear, vulnerability isn't just crying in front of people or admiring admiring other people or building up other people or exposing that sometimes we feel weak. That's not what vulnerability is. Vulnerability can include things like taking responsibility when we've hurt someone. Those have been some of my most healing moments when I show up as my greatest healer is when I take responsibility for when I've hurt someone. It means admitting we don't know something. It means expressing gratitude. And while your close to connection to anger and rage is part of your strength, it is part of your fire, right? And it's something that many of us still need to learn and get close to. At the same time, it's easy to just be angry at the man or anyone all the time. That's the easy way out. And it's a distraction to focus on bringing that down versus creating something new. So what you want to do if you're in this wound is to channel the rage into something new. Put all of that fire and energy into what you do want it to be instead of trying to take down what you feel like is the problem. Because when you're doing this to others, that means it's also what you're doing to yourself. Instead of creating something new in yourself, your energy is focused on taking yourself down, even if it's subconsciously, even if it's subtly, even if you're not aware you're doing it. Your ability to stand in the fire isn't for destruction or self-sacrifice, but for creating a new path and for going to places that other people won't go. That's your skill. That's your gift. Going to others' biggest fears or wounds and being able to hold that for them. You're brave, so you can forge a path like no one else can. You're the ones that actually create change. And it's not by destroying the old, but creating something new. It starts with a new way with yourself. That means walking the walk. That means ending the self-hate. That means ending the self-inflation that covers up the self-hate. So if you're building a business and this is you, here are some simple things that you can practice. Be willing to make mistakes and be okay. And it be okay. Making mistakes is okay. Be willing to publicly acknowledge mistakes or wrongdoing. Be willing to express all of your feelings, not just anger and disappointment. In a world that looks like it wants to conquer everything else, be the person who conquers yourself. Turn that desire to burn down the system into a system of flaming love, fierce compassion, total honesty, no more victim, full responsibility, let shit go. It's here that we actually get to know ourselves and know who we are. It's here we get to show up as a thing we wish someone would have been for us. It's our own vulnerability that creates love. This is the way for you. So let me recap. For today, the gifts of the South is creating new pathways, and its wound is destruction. And the way to move through that wound is by being vulnerable. This is what creates new pathways and what creates turns what was destruction into love. And of course, remember again, this is just one side of the wheel. So we're all going to experience this at one point in our lives, and both in our lives and in our business. And so in this way, we can have compassion when we see other people in this side of the wheel. And we also get an opportunity to lean into this side of the wheel when this fire, this passion, this no fear is something that we're missing in our lives and in our business. Mm-hmm. So next week, we'll be doing the fourth part of the series. We'll be moving into the West, our empathic friend. Be talking more about the gifts and the wounds in the West and how that will show up in your life and business. Make sure you tune in then. Thanks for joining me today. Have you been hearing the call to expand your spiritual gifts and step into your next level of conscious leadership? If you're a coach, healer, or a spiritual leader, you can learn more about Shaman School and growing your spiritual business on our website, HoltonHealingArts.com, or send me a DM at Holton Healing Arts. Welcome to today's Member Query episode, where we explore questions about spiritual paths, intuitive gifts, growing a spiritual business, and shamanism. Do you have a question for us? Send us a DM at Holton Healing Arts. This question is again from one of our Leading with Spirit Facebook group members, and the question is, I'm starting to become aware of some of my gifts, but I do not know what to do with them, and I feel like I don't have control of them. So I'm assuming the question is, what can I do to help feel like I have control of my gifts and can put them to use? And it's important to remember here that a lot of people try to figure this out on their own. And of course, gifts are made to be shared. They're made to be used with other people. And so the first issue is that a lot of us want to understand how to use our gifts and try to do it by just thinking about what it might be like. And that's not going to give you any answers or experience. It's actually probably going to frustrate you more because you'll be in the mind and theory and not in the part of yourself and the part of the brain that actually is connected to these gifts and knows how to use them. The second thing to keep in mind is to get yourself in a container where you can actually practice using them in a way that is safe around people that are in agreement with them and with a proper guide or mentor that can help show you how to use them and what to do with them. And then lastly, I always encourage, just as a simple technique to grow your gifts, is to actually talk about them. So it's important here to keep in mind that it's not about convincing other people that you have gifts, demonstrating that you have them, or making yourself be seen in them, or better, trying to convince people that you have something special. It's actually about sharing your experience. So when you have a dream about somebody or something, sharing that. When you have a premonition about something, just saying it out loud and not necessarily being attached to any particular result from that, but just sharing it because it's part of your experience. And the more we do that with detachment from convincing somebody else about what it is we want them to see, or do that without attachment or expectations about what others think, the more we'll start to sink in and trust our gifts, and the more we can see how they're meant to be used. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Leading with Spirit. If you did, please share the link for this episode with your biggest takeaway, tagging me at Holton Healing Arts. It would also support me if you subscribed and left a rating and review of the show so we can support more people living their highest purpose. Until next time,